Clara had always lived a quiet, predictable life in her small apartment building, waking up to the soft hum of the city, sipping her morning tea, and reading books in the evenings, content in her own company, until one rainy Thursday changed everything. She was sitting by the window, watching the drops race each other down the glass, thinking about how ordinary her life had become, when a gentle knock on her door startled her, and when she opened it, she found Daniel, her neighbor's teenage son, standing there awkwardly, his school bag slung over one shoulder, holding a worn notebook in his hands, and his eyes darting nervously from her face to the floor, as if he wasn't sure if she would say yes. And when she smiled warmly and invited him in, a small relieved sigh escaped him, and Clara noticed how tall he was growing and how his voice had deepened over the past year. And as they sat at her kitchen table, she poured them both a cup of warm cocoa, trying to make the atmosphere lighter, while he shuffled through his papers, mumbling about confusing homework problems, numbers, and essays that seemed impossible to him, and she listened patiently, offering explanations in simple words, showing him tricks to solve equations, ways to structure his sentences, ways to organize his thoughts without overwhelming him. And as the hours passed, the rain outside continued, the clock ticked quietly, and Clara found herself laughing at his occasional funny mistakes, enjoying the way he brightened up when he finally understood something, feeling a warmth she hadn't realized she missed, a connection that was innocent yet deeply comforting, as if her presence mattered to someone in a real, meaningful way. And when Daniel finally closed his notebook, stretching his arms and smiling sheepishly, he turned to her and said almost shyly, "Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without you." And those words hung in the air longer than they should have, making Clara's heart flutter unexpectedly, a mixture of pride, tenderness, and a strange longing that confused her. And she realized in that moment that this simple act of helping a young boy with homework had become something far more significant, a quiet intimacy, a soft bond built on trust, shared time, and mutual respect. And as Daniel walked back to his apartment, glancing once more over his shoulder with a small wave and a hesitant smile, Clara remained by the window, staring out at the rain, feeling a strange mixture of joy and melancholy, wondering why the memory of his eyes, his soft voice, and his innocent yet heartfelt gratitude made her chest tighten, why she could not shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something delicate, something that could grow, something that might change the way she felt about her ordinary, quiet life forever. And she found herself thinking about what he might say next time, what he might reveal if given the chance, how a simple request for help had unexpectedly opened a door to emotions she thought she had long locked away. And as the night deepened, the city lights blurred through the falling rain, Clara realized she had spent hours immersed in something ordinary yet extraordinary, and that sometimes the smallest gestures, helping with homework, listening patiently, sharing laughter, could create moments that lingered, moments that changed her perception of connection, of trust, and of the quiet thrill of unexpected closeness. And she drifted off to sleep that night with a soft smile, wondering what tomorrow's knock on the door might bring, and feeling that her life, simple and predictable though it seemed, had suddenly taken a subtle, beautiful turn, and that the world, for all its quiet routines, could still surprise her in the most tender, unexpected ways. Days passed after that rainy evening, and Clara found herself thinking about Daniel more often than she expected, the memory of his shy smile and earnest eyes lingering in her mind as she went about her quiet routine. And when he knocked again the following Monday, holding another notebook and a few loose papers, she felt a flutter of anticipation, a warmth she couldn't quite explain, as she welcomed him in and gestured for him to sit at the kitchen table, pouring cocoa again as they settled into their usual rhythm, Daniel fidgeting slightly with his pen while she guided him through tricky math problems and essay prompts, his brow furrowed at first but slowly relaxing as understanding dawned on him. And Clara found herself noticing the little details about him, the way he tucked his hair behind his ear when he was thinking, the faint dimple that appeared when he laughed, the way his eyes would briefly meet hers and linger just a second too long, making her heart skip, a confusing yet pleasant feeling she hadn't experienced in years. And as they worked together, talking about school, books, and small everyday things, there was a quiet intimacy growing between them, a sense of trust that felt unspoken yet deeply understood. And sometimes, while helping him organize his thoughts for essays, Clara would glance at him and catch him staring at her for a heartbeat, quickly looking away as if embarrassed, and she couldn't help but smile softly, sensing that he was discovering emotions he didn't yet have the words for, just as she was. And on one particular afternoon, the sunlight streaming through the kitchen window, casting warm golden hues across the room. Daniel paused mid-sentence, pen hovering over the paper, and cleared his throat nervously, looking down at his notebook before daring to lift his eyes toward her and said, "Clara, can I ask you something?" Her heart skipped, an unexpected jolt of curiosity and concern intertwining as she leaned forward slightly, encouraging him with a soft nod, and he hesitated, words catching in his throat before finally asking, "Do you ever feel lonely?" The question was simple, yet it carried a weight that made the air between them feel charged, intimate, and fragile all at once, and Clara felt a rush of emotion she hadn't anticipated, a mixture of empathy, surprise, and a tender ache, as she realized that this young man, so earnest and thoughtful, was opening a door into his emotions, trusting her with a vulnerability that few shared, and she nodded slowly, her voice gentle yet honest as she admitted that yes, sometimes she did feel lonely. And for a fleeting moment, the room was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic outside, the golden sunlight catching in Daniel's hair, highlighting the earnestness in his expression, and they shared a look that seemed to say everything without words, a silent acknowledgement of connection, of shared understanding, and of feelings that neither fully named, and as they resumed their work, there was a new lightness in Daniel's demeanor, a softness in his movements, a subtle glow in his smile, as if the act of speaking his truth had lifted a weight off his shoulders, and Clara noticed how even the smallest gestures, how he carefully organized his notebook, how he asked questions, how he occasionally glanced at her for reassurance, seemed infused with meaning, with an unspoken affection, and she herself felt her heart respond in kind, a gentle warmth spreading through her chest, a mixture of care, protectiveness, and something deeper, something that felt both thrilling and frightening, because she knew the emotions unfolding were delicate, fragile, and not yet fully understood by either of them, and over the following weeks, their after-school sessions became more than just homework help, they became moments of shared connection, a quiet companionship that neither of them labeled, but both felt profoundly, moments of laughter over small mistakes, of deep conversation about books and life, of fleeting glances and subtle touches, a brush of hands reaching for a pen, a shoulder lightly touching when passing a notebook, and though neither spoke of it, there was a growing awareness, a magnetic pull between them that Clara recognized as a mixture of admiration, longing, and tender curiosity. And one rainy afternoon, as the wind rattled the windows and Daniel struggled with a particularly tricky problem, he suddenly threw down his pencil in frustration and leaned back in his chair, sighing heavily, and Clara reached out instinctively to rest a hand on his arm, offering quiet reassurance, and he looked at her, eyes wide and vulnerable, as if realizing the depth of her care, and whispered almost inaudibly, I don't know what I'd do without you." And the word struck her in a way nothing else had, sending a shiver down her spine, a mix of pride, affection, and a confusing, unnameable emotion that left her heart pounding, because she understood that in saying this, he wasn't just expressing gratitude for her help with homework, but for her presence, for the way she listened, for the way she made him feel seen and valued, and in that moment, the kitchen felt smaller, cozier, as if the world outside had ceased to exist, leaving only the two of them suspended in a bubble of quiet intensity, and she realized that the connection they were forming was unique, delicate, and beautiful, a gentle bond that carried unspoken promises, soft admiration, and the thrill of discovering emotions neither of them fully understood yet. And as Daniel gathered his notebooks to leave, brushing past her with a shy smile, she felt a pang of longing, an ache for more time, more conversation, more of this quiet intimacy, and when he paused at the door and looked back, a question forming in his eyes he didn't voice, she realized that both of them were dancing around feelings unspoken, emotions raw and tender, and that their simple after-school meetings had transformed into a series of moments charged with unspoken meaning, moments that Clara would replay in her mind late at night, her heart swelling and aching in equal measure, wondering what the next session would bring, what words he might speak, what glances he might dare to hold, and she understood that life had a way of surprising her with small, quiet connections that could shift her heart in ways she never imagined, that in helping a young boy with homework, she had stumbled into a world of emotions that were gentle yet powerful, delicate yet undeniable, and as she closed the door behind him, watching him disappear down the hallway, she leaned against the frame, a soft smile touching her lips, knowing that the bond between them was growing, fragile, and precious, and that the words he had whispered, the vulnerability he had shown, were leaving a lasting imprint on her heart, a feeling she couldn't name but would not soon forget, and she felt a mix of anticipation, hope, and the quiet thrill of connection, realizing that sometimes the simplest acts, helping someone, listening, caring, could open doors to emotions far deeper than expected, and that both she and Daniel were embarking on an unspoken journey together. A journey of trust, warmth, longing, and the subtle magic of hearts meeting in the quiet, unexpected corners of everyday life. And as the evening descended, the city lights twinkling in the distance, Clara knew that their story was only beginning, that each meeting, each word, each glance would layer meaning and emotion, and that the gentle tension building between them was something neither could ignore, a soft, simmering connection that promised both joy and complication, beauty and longing. And she closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself feel the full weight of it, knowing that the coming days would bring more questions, more emotions, and more moments of unspoken intimacy, and that life, in its quiet unpredictability, had led her to this delicate, emotional, and utterly human connection that was hers and Daniel's to navigate together. Eeks had passed since that quiet, rainy evening when Clara first helped Daniel with his homework, and in that time, their connection had deepened in ways neither fully understood, each meeting after school becoming more than just study sessions, more than simple conversations about math problems or literature. Essays turning into moments filled with laughter, quiet glances, soft touches that lingered a second too long, and conversations that drifted into personal stories, hopes, fears, and dreams that Daniel had never shared with anyone else, and Clara found herself drawn to him in a way she hadn't expected, a mixture of protectiveness, admiration, and a subtle, unspoken longing, and she wondered if he felt the same, sensing in his nervous smiles and quick glances that he did. Yet both of them, navigating the delicate boundaries of age, trust, and uncharted emotion, and one bright afternoon, when the sunlight poured through her kitchen window, casting warm, golden patterns across the wooden table, Daniel arrived with an unusual energy, a nervous excitement that made Clara notice the way he fidgeted with his notebook, rearranged the pencils, and avoided meeting her eyes, and when she asked him what was wrong, he hesitated, cheeks flushing faintly, before handing her a folded piece of paper saying softly, "I wrote something for you. Please read it." Her heart thumped in anticipation, a mixture of curiosity and a strange fear of what he might reveal, and as she carefully unfolded the note, her eyes scanned his words, written in a handwriting that was still awkward in places but full of earnest feeling, and she read lines expressing gratitude, admiration, and a tenderness that was both innocent and surprisingly mature, describing how he appreciated her patience, her guidance, the way she listened without judgment, and the way she made him feel seen and valued, how her presence had brought a sense of comfort and understanding he had never felt before, and the note hinted at deeper feelings, a longing to spend more time together, a quiet admiration that had grown silently over their weeks of shared moments. And as Clara finished reading, her chest tightened, a wave of warmth, joy, and bittersweet emotion washing over her, because she understood that Daniel's words were not just about homework or friendship. They were about a connection, delicate yet undeniable, that neither of them had fully named, a bond that had formed in the quiet, unassuming moments of laughter, guidance, and shared vulnerability. And when she looked up at him, he was watching her nervously, eyes wide, hands clasped together, a hopeful expression that made her heart ache with tenderness, and she realized that in those simple after-school meetings, they had discovered something rare and fragile, a closeness that transcended ordinary friendship, a quiet intimacy born of trust, attention, and care, and she reached out instinctively, resting her hand gently over his, giving him a small, reassuring smile, and he exhaled softly, relief flooding his features, as if the simple touch confirmed a bond he had longed to feel affirmed, and in that moment, words felt unnecessary, their eyes speaking what neither could say aloud, conveying gratitude, admiration, affection, and the complicated, tender feelings that had quietly taken root over time. And Clara felt a mix of happiness and melancholy, aware of the beauty of the connection and the delicacy of its boundaries, the need to navigate it carefully, yet she allowed herself to feel the warmth, the joy, and the intensity of the emotion that had blossomed in these ordinary yet extraordinary moments. And Daniel, emboldened by her response, shared a shy, heartfelt smile, and though he didn't speak more, his expression communicated everything: trust, admiration, longing, and the hope for more moments like this, more shared afternoons, more laughter, more quiet understanding. And as he prepared to leave, he lingered at the doorway, as if wanting to say more but unsure how. And Clara, sensing the weight of the unspoken, encouraged him gently with her eyes, and he finally nodded, stepping into the hallway with a soft, lingering glance back, and the sound of his footsteps faded down the corridor, leaving Clara alone with a fluttering heart, a sense of anticipation and a quiet awareness that life had subtly shifted, that their connection had deepened into something profoundly emotional and meaningful, and as she sat back at the table, holding the note, rereading his words, she felt a mixture of joy, longing, and gentle sadness, understanding that what they shared was rare, delicate, and precious, and she allowed herself to imagine the possibilities, the growth of trust, the unfolding of feelings, and the quiet magic that had emerged from such ordinary beginnings. And in the days that followed, Clara found herself carrying the memory of that note and that glance with her, noticing how she anticipated Daniel's visits, how her thoughts drifted to him during her quiet moments, how her heart warmed at the recollection of his soft expressions, and she realized that even small gestures, shared smiles, careful guidance, gentle touches, could create bonds that lingered and changed her in ways she hadn't expected. And Daniel, too, she knew, would carry the memory of her presence, her patience, her understanding as a source of comfort, inspiration, and emotion. And though the road ahead was uncertain, and the feelings complex and tender, Clara understood that this connection, fragile yet vibrant, was a gift, a reminder of the human capacity for empathy, care, and gentle affection, and she resolved to cherish it, to nurture it carefully, while allowing the emotions to grow naturally, beautifully, and safely. And in the quiet of the evening, as the sun dipped behind the buildings and painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, Clara held the note close to her chest, heart swelling with the sweetness and intensity of what had been shared, and smiled softly, knowing that their story was only beginning, that the afternoons, the laughter, the quiet moments of understanding, and the tender glances would continue to shape their bond, bringing joy, introspection, longing, and the subtle thrill of emotional connection, and that the words Daniel had written, the vulnerability he had shown, were not just fleeting sentiments, but seeds of a meaningful, heartfelt relationship that would remain in their hearts, delicate yet unbreakable, shaping the way they saw each other and themselves. And as night settled over the city, Clara felt a quiet peace mixed with anticipation, a gentle excitement for what the coming days would bring, knowing that their story, soft, emotional, tender, and profoundly human, was unfolding in ways neither could have predicted, a story of hearts meeting quietly, unexpectedly, and beautifully, in the simple, extraordinary moments of life shared together.